Right, so we come to the final session of today, and this is actually presented in two parts. One, we'll have a presentation about a paper that we've just launched. Clive mentioned it this morning. The Digital Twin Working Group has produced a paper. We're going to be announcing that, and we have a speaker to talk us through that in a minute. The Digital Twin Working Group was actually formed in 2019, and 5 years later, we're still going and still producing content. So hoping that that's relevant and valuable for people. At the same time, I think we appreciate feedback also from the community as well. We also then, after the presentation of this new paper, we have a panel. So we have a series of panelists. I'll be inviting up Jugal Makwana, who's a board member of buildingSMART International, who will be our moderator for the session. He'll be doing the presentation the hosting of the panel. We're going to be using Mentimeter, so we'll have some interaction with the audience, so get ready with your phones. We'll be scanning QR codes and taking that information. And then just to remind everyone that tomorrow we will actually have a working group, a working session with the Digital Twin Working Group. And we'll be using some of the results that we get from this session today for input into the discussion tomorrow. And we're using some of the data that we've collected over the years that we've done at these summits for that continuity. So you're welcome to join us at the working group tomorrow as well. And Mark will talk a little bit about that. I see people are still coming in, so I'm sort of, trying to pad as much as possible. As anyone can notice, there's a couple of chuckles at the front. Yeah, so just letting a few more people come in. Hope the experience online has also been good. I've joined a couple of times from my phone. It seems to be stable and pretty much up to speed. And we have our panelists. Jeffrey, you're here. Where are your bright colored shoes? Ah, you've got some...
I don't get my socks and these on.
Okay, great. All right, so I think we're going to get started. To talk us through the launch of this new white paper, I'd like to invite Mark Enzer, who's the strategic advisor of Mott MacDonald. Mark is also a member of our Digital Twin Working Group and is a visiting professor from the University of Cambridge and Imperial. Is that correct? It is. So, Mark, please, over to you.
Thank you very much. So, thank you. That's applause for Aidan, not for me. I don't deserve any yet, but let's see where we get to with this, and let's see if we can tempt some more people through. Because this really is, I think, an important area for us to consider. As Aidan mentioned today, we are launching a new white paper. So if you've got your mobile phones, please do scan that right now. Get it into your mobile phones, get hold of this. And by all means, just go ahead and read it. So this is the latest white paper from the Digital Twins Working Group. Let me just give a little bit of background for the Digital Twins Working Group. Hopefully, we're far more known by our output than by our faces. And this is our output, big enough for you to read. And then if we look at that output in a little bit of a timeline, you can see that it goes all the way back to May 2020, when the first Digital Twins white paper came out, which was really introducing the concept of digital twins to this community, because it's absolutely clear that this community has a huge amount to play in this area of digital twins. We didn't stop there. And the remainder of the story really comes in terms of big steps forward at big summits, and that is at Rome, at Lillestrøm, and now today at Marrakesh. So let me just talk you through that very briefly. First at Rome, it was introducing the 3 horizons. And so the 3 horizons are kind of saying that if we're going to put in place a roadmap to the future, starting where we are now, but anticipating and having the ambition for a bigger and better and more connected and more integrated future, then we kind of need to think in 3 horizons. The realism of today, where we deal with all the real issues that we have today and we look for early value, but also the ambitious future, a future vision, a better place that we're aiming for. And then importantly, that transition, the step in the middle to get us from where we are now to where we want to be. So a very simple 3-horizon model, but introducing that at Rome. And then at Lillestrom, we took it another step further in the next paper coming out, around 7 perspectives. Now, these 7 perspectives end up being incredibly valuable on that same roadmap. If we've got the 3 horizons, then the 7 perspectives help us to ask the right questions. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail. If you want to go through in detail, go back to the paper. But these perspectives are super, super useful. And I would say not just in the world of trying to advance digital twins, but actually these are pretty useful perspectives to bring to pretty much any project. Okay, so that then leads us in a nice progression of thinking. And you can see us starting down the bottom of this kind of fountain here with the first paper on an ecosystem of digital twins. Then the 7 perspectives that help us to identify the right questions to ask on our journey. And so today, what we're launching is a systems perspective. And the point of this is to give the big picture. It's to give that view of the world within which all of the rest makes sense. So I would highly commend this paper to you. I won't run through it in detail because really what we want to do is encourage you to read it. That's the conclusion of my particular part of this talk. But what you'll find in this paper is the approach that we've taken. It outlines the challenges that we face, but also the opportunities which are emerging. Importantly, the role of openBIM, because this is the community that does openBIM. And that is so important in this journey that goes beyond BIM into digital twins, into connected digital twins, into this ecosystem. And it provides this systems perspective, like I say, the big picture. So let me take just a few moments to talk about that big picture, this systems thinking perspective. And let me start by talking about the built environment. I will be very brief. And the first thing really is to say that the built environment is not just a series of construction projects. So often our industry only focuses on the build part, but we've been building for years. We've got something already. The built environment is amazing. This combination of economic infrastructure, social infrastructure, and the interface with the natural environment. It's complex, it's interconnected, it's interdependent, because transport doesn't work without energy. Energy doesn't work without telecoms. Telecoms doesn't work without water. It's all interconnected. And so what I'd like to kind of say to you is, just as a statement of fact, the built environment is amazing. And also the built environment is a system of systems. And given that it is a system of systems, then we should run it that way. The trouble is we don't. We've got these connected physical systems. We've also got connected challenges that face our built environment, not least of which is that we're burning the planet. Climate change is real. But this is not the only one. You know, if we think about what we face in the built environment, there's a lot of highly connected challenges. Whether we're trying to achieve net zero or provide climate resilience or deliver infrastructure equity, move towards a circular economy, you know, these are big challenges, aren't they? And the key thing about them is they don't happen in silos, so we can't solve them in silos. We need connected thinking. And so if I just summarize this for us, we've got really connected systems, physically connected systems. We've also got really connected challenges. However, we've got siloed organizations that run it, stovepipes that go all the way through from ministries, you know, through regulators and into clients, and where you don't have energy properly talking to transport, etc. Siloed organizations, but also siloed information. Because even if we got the organizations to talk to each other properly, they still wouldn't be able to do their job, because the data they need to run a system of systems is also in silos. And this is a really key place where we come in. We are the community that can address this. We are the community of openBIM. This whole thing about addressing data silos is kind of what we do. So this is for us. This is part of what we can bring a solution to. This is not some theoretical problem over there. This is for our community to solve. And so how do we do it? I think, read the paper, you'll find out loads, but there's a very kind of simple way of seeing things, which I think is helpful. So I'll share it with you very briefly, and then I'll run away and you'll have the panel. So this is really to start with the outcomes. This is systems thinking. Systems thinking is all about relationships and connections, but it's also about outcomes, because that's what we want. You know, from the amazing built environment systems that we have, the reason for them is to get better outcomes for people and nature. So those will always be some kind of combination of people outcomes, planet outcomes, prosperity outcomes. So we start with the outcomes because that's the most important thing. The next thing is to really understand the systems, this system of systems of our built environment. Because if we understand the systems better, then we can intervene more effectively. We can tweak the systems towards delivering better outcomes. We shouldn't be proud about this, though, because we can't control this. It's a complex system. It's too complex to control. But what we can do is understand it better, work with it better, tweak it, encourage it towards delivering better outcomes. And how do we do that? Well, it's through our interventions. And this is the bit that is more familiar to us. Generally, our industry focuses on the interventions. I think it's really helpful for us to see our projects as interventions on the system, which help to tweak the system to deliver outcomes. You can see why I started this diagram on the right, even though it kind of does move from left to right as well. And so we have a part to play in this because we're the people who work in the interventions. But if we only focus on that, we don't recognize the system, we're not even aiming for the outcomes, then we can't help to sort out those big issues that I talked about before. So this is systems thinking. Don't be scared of it. All it means is that we get better joined up. And the built environment, the nature of the built environment is that it needs an approach which is strategic and long-term and joined up. This is just saying, let's get joined up. So final thought, final thing is that if we've got this built environment, our system of systems, what we're kind of dealing with is the digital version of that, aren't we? We're in those digital worlds. Digital worlds are real, becoming ever more real. And I think one of the key things which we're enabling is a connection between digital and physical. We're making those connections. And each one of these ones, as I add on here, is like a digital twin. But they're all isolated. What we can imagine is making connections between the twins. That is the ecosystem of connected digital twins that we started with. The first paper was about that. But it doesn't kind of make sense unless we see it in the context of the system of systems. And the final thing is that if we're going to take this approach, and I massively commend it to us, this is the way that we have to go, then our approach should be outcomes-focused, systems-based, and community-enabled, because you can't do it in silos. And we are the community. We're the community that enables this. So thank you very much. Download the report and give it a good read. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so please do download it. Let us know if we did a good job or not, but let's put this to the test. Let's have some of these topics that we've just discussed for this panel. So to be our moderator for this session, I'm going to invite Jugal Makwana, who is a buildingSMART International board member, very well-known face at these events. So Jugal, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And a big round of applause for Mark and the entire Twin group. Great paper. Thank you. So we have 80, 90 minutes, right? But we have an announcement. So we are talking about what next. You've heard a lot of things through the day, and we have a fairly golden panel who will help us translating some of those questions. And we've changed the format, so each of them have now 200 slides to present. So we are just going to extend the session. We're going to lock the doors, and you can cancel all your plans for dinner till we figure out what's next. Okay? Now, as we start, I would like to invite the panel, and then we get started. I will first invite Clive Jordan. Please come and join me. Clive is the CEO of Plenary and a big supporter of openBIM and everything that we do. So it's great to have you. Please welcome him. Now I would invite Jeffrey Avina, who's from LeapThought. They have recently joined as the strategic member for buildingSMART International. Again, thank you. Jean McAther. She is a professor at the Toronto Metropolitan University. She's professor at the day and stand-up comic at night. So that is what she's going to do after our panel as well. Thank you. Now, let me invite Joe Travis. Joe is from Bentley Systems. Now, I have a history with Bentley, so it's good to see one of my ex-colleagues here. Welcome. He's the Solutions Engineering Director and focused on helping the industry transform. And last but not least, Bart Brink. Bart Brink is he's the chair of the Digital Twin Working Group and one of the co-authors of the paper, and former colleague of mine as well. Please welcome. Thank you. So the way things are going to work is, we've seen that all of you like your phones and you have been on your phones through the day. So let's use them. So we will be, the entire panel is split into 3 segments. When we talk about what's next, we want to go on a journey around exploring what we have learned from the past, where we are, and where we want to go. And in that context, we have series of questions from you. Because, yeah, we have 120 years of experience here, and roughly we have 4,000 years of experience there. So let's use that and see what we can get out of it. So can someone help me with the Mentimeter, please? So you'll have, pick your phones and start to scan things. There'll be a few questions. So in each of these segments, you'll be asked a couple of questions. You need to answer them. And then we have a discussion, and that is how we are going to go. We'll try to wrap it up as fast as we can. If you're hungry, then let me know and we'll see. Thank you. Yeah. So I did a... So I used Copilot earlier, taking an image of everyone from the back to do a counting, and we roughly have 200 people in the room. So let's see how many of you are connected. Can we also see the Mentimeter on this screen over here, please? So the QR code is on every slide. So let's see, where are you from? Yeah, as expected, there's a big community of AEC. Lots of client software, obviously. Good. So there is a fairly good mix of people in here. Oh. Yeah, sorry. We missed on Ridouane. Please join in. He's from JESA.
If he's not wearing a hat.
Can I get a
I'm not
mic
wearing
for
hat
Ridouane?
Yeah.
Yep.
And a hat.
So Ridouane is the
Pass the hat.
digital
Talking.
transformation lead at JESA. Good. Please welcome him. Thank you.
My head's too big.
Great. So it's an interesting, good. So there is a lot of diversity in the people. So the perspective should also be good. Now let's talk about BIM, right? All of we, and when we talk about BIM, it's meant openBIM, and all of us have been on this journey for several years. Some of us have been on this journey for much longer. Like I've been in this journey for almost 20 years, and many of you have been associated with buildingSMART and BIM for a very, very long time. So it would be good to understand what are the factors that have led to this. Okay. So in the last one, we had 94 people vote for it. So let's see. Okay. Good. So there are client requirements which seem to be the first or the biggest drivers, and efficiency.
Yeah,
good.
put it on our
Let's
case.
talk about one more question before we dive to the next. And in that journey that we have been part of, can you rate how easy or difficult has it been for you and your organization to embrace this journey? Okay. So in the next panel, I would like to get all those people who are saying it has been easy in here. Okay. Great. It has obviously been difficult. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing this. Now let's talk about this. So I would go each of you and let's reflect on these some of these challenges that have been. Sorry, can we see this on this screen as well so that it's easier for the panelists to kind of view it?
Where's the answer that says for collaborative advantage or for the project good rather than?
Yeah, good point. So let's talk about this. So there is obviously we in through the day we heard about efficiency and productivity and the need for outcomes and Mark talked about connected outcomes and connecting. So what is your perspective in terms of how let's say in your journey that you have, what has influenced you the most, and what have you seen that has kind of changed the way you adapt and work?
I'm a bit of a lean junkie, so I love anything that focuses on the customer and what does the customer want. And I think that the customer is the one that's saying, I want this project. And if you can make it more efficient for the good of the project, it's the collaborative nature. And I think that was really the drive for BIM adoption, is how can we make it more collaborative between multiple parties rather than just making it more efficient for one party? Because I think that the whole project wins and then every single individual win. Okay.
So yeah, that collaborative aspect is something that kind
maybe
of
that's all of
reflects in that connected aspect, right? So yep. you have to be competitive, but then you have to be efficient. We as an industry can't be efficient unless we are collaborative and connected. And that brings on to Jeffrey. You focus on collaboration and the common data environment and all of that stuff. What is your perspective?
It's nice because I'm going to follow up from what Mark said. I was going to say that LeapThought is a systems engineering kind of approach, but actually I would say now that we're a system think approach. Because in essence, what we try to do is take a holistic approach to the overall process, focusing on the perspective of the entity owner, the enterprise. Why? They're the ones who own the platform. They're the ones who have to manage it after it's gone, when the building's gone, whatever infrastructure it is. They're the ones who are left with it. They're the ones who have the right to have all the data. The only way that can happen is if you're working on a generative platform where there's a fluid data flow which goes through, and there's a process which goes through, which enables the enterprise to see the entire process all the way up. That's why openBIM, open standards are so critical, because if you don't have that kind of a natural data flow, you're not building up greater and greater capacity, and you're never going to get to what we think is most important, at least for our work with enterprise, which is not sub-project management, which is being done very well, or project management, which is also improving, but actually portfolio management. There are representatives here from government, the representatives here who are actually owners. You don't just own one thing. And coming back to Mark's point, there's an interface, there's an interactivity between a number of different areas. And so it's very important that there's an open standard which will enable that fluid data flow. And from that fluid data flow, hopefully a single source of truth, which takes us back to ISO 19650. That's, I think, why we're here. I also want to say that this is obviously a stilted audience because everyone here is already a believer, except for the one. And if you ask the same question in an open venue, this would be 60, 70% who don't use BIM. So coming back again to Mark's point, we've just met, but I'm parading him. The fact is we are, in that sense, evangelists, as is buildingSMART, to drive this notion that there's a better way, and it does include a very top-down approach, which is why LeapThought started from that system engineer response to the needs of that level of client.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. And
we have it now. Good.
Jen, you have been in research and you've been working with the government and various entities, and what has been your experience and your perspective?
So it's interesting. I found that, and I am gonna be that little drop of cold water. Is a lot of these guys are really afraid of them. They find it really intimidating. Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the guiding principles, the first time I actually presented a BIM model, like it was part of the virtual campus model to the facilities management group, I actually got laughed out of the room because I was answering the wrong questions. And I think one of the biggest learnings that I've had so far is really the need to be strategic about identifying the use cases that are going to speak to the end users to try and overcome that, right? Like if you start with something they don't care about, they don't see the value right away. They just see it as a lot of investment that they have to make. But if you can actually answer the questions. So my friend Paul came to me afterwards. He was the engineering energy manager. And he said, listen, the guys laughed as soon as you left the room because they're like, we don't need her to show us where the light bulbs are. We can find a light bulb. But I get 100,000 pieces of information that come across my desk every year. If you can give me a platform that tells me the 5 things a day I need to pay attention to, I'll be your champion. And I think if we can learn to listen to people and really speak to their felt needs and come up with the use cases and identify all of the information and exchange requirements that support that, that's one of the things that we need to do, really break down these barriers and get we didn't adopt them into internal efficiency, competitive advantage, et cetera.
Cool. Joe, would be good to get your perspective because from a Bentley's perspective, you're focused on solution engineering, you're focused on connecting the different silos from a data and information perspective. And what's next in that Bentley is currently focusing on?
Yeah, so Bentley's been making software for 40 years now. We just had our 40th anniversary, and we've been focused, of course, on CAD and GIS and BIM software. And the huge focus recently has really been around open standards, open formats, open APIs, making sure that our accounts can customize and extend the value of our software to their needs. And really, it's them driving us to some extent. It's a push-pull type of relationship. You see here the internal efficiency improvements and client requirements. It's the clients that are trying to say, hey, if only we could do this one more thing. And so that's why we want to be as open as possible and have integration as much as possible. If you go to our accounts and you say, what can we do for you? The main message they say is, help us become more competitive, help us win more business. And it's because of these types of open stances that we're taking that they are able to win more business and become much more competitive in their marketplace.
Cool, thank you. And Bart, now if you, in the paper with which Mark and you have kind of co-authored and a few others, you talk about connection, right? It's a connected ecosystem. And in this, let's say if we look at, the ultimate objective is improving efficiency, but then you also want to be competitive. There's a client requirement. And you've been on both sides. So you've been part of the government now and the consulting world. So how do you see that connection, and what do you think is driving this trend?
Now, I think listening to the answers and looking to the choices were given here, I miss kind of 2 things if I try to connect it to the paper. And the first word is collaborative, which you already mentioned, because getting to a system of systems is about managing the connections and get handovers in those connections from one to another. So I really like the first comment. The collaboration that it requires should have been there, is not in there, and I think it's a way where we need to work together on. because that's outside of your influence, and therefore you need open standards, but because then you can collaborate better. So that's one instance. It's really about collaboration in our value chain. And I think that's where you also see that governments come in to really feel, hey, we can facilitate there or need to help there or even mandate certain things there. The other direction is triggered by the word requirements, which is for me not the same as the word outcome. And requirements is a translation of an outcome, what a client might want to do with it. But I think in our project-related way of looking at things, instead of a system way of looking at things, we tend to focus just on the requirements of the project. So if we don't watch out, we end up with a beautiful bridge, which will stand there forever, but can't deal with changes in the way we drive or we commute. And so I think it's also us as a sector to think beyond requirements and think towards those outcomes. And what are the outcomes of this project and help the client with it. So I think there's a second perspective, which we try to add in the paper as well.
Okay. Yeah, outcome is an interesting aspect. And Ridouane, you've been leading digital transformation for JESA. What are the kind of outcomes that you're aiming to achieve with everything that was presented in the morning around all the fantastic stuff that is happening in Morocco and all the mandates that are in place? What kind of outcomes are you looking for?
First, thank you for inviting me. I think it's really a great opportunity to welcome all of these experts in Morocco. And Morocco is at the forefront of Africa in terms of infrastructure, building, and equipping for the future. And when we started the reflection about our digital transformation in JESA in the IE&C sector, we realized that the project is really a chaos. You know, every project has their own life, their own circumstances, their own parameters. And it's very important to have a transformation like you have in other sectors. For example, industrial, where you figure out the solution once, it works everywhere. Every project has its different life. So you have to really have, this is why we talk about collaboration, and we talk about having an ecosystem approach. And I really liked when they talked about community enabled, because actually when we started, for example, to work on a pilot, it was very hard to make all of the ecosystem follow us in the same speed of vision and ambition that we have. And we realized that we had to connect with our community so that all of these things, so being our client requirements, being our ambition to actually fulfill community-based needs, and being our also ambition to lead our ecosystem of contractors, we needed to be the leaders, show the example, and also push them to also better understand, better adopt, better move through training, capacity building, etc. And we started those conversations. This is still an ongoing effort, but I think this is one of the things to think about when you are trying to transform a whole ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to the next set of questions, it's would be good to reflect on this in terms of, yeah, it's not easy implementing BIM, and we have seen lots of examples, right, where people have implemented, and scaling up is the biggest challenge that we've seen. So when we talk about what's next and what's next in helping some of these organizations move and make it easy, so what is one thing that you would say that they should focus on going forward, which could make their journey easier? 30 seconds.
Define what it is. So I think that one of the things you go, okay, let's implement BIM. I think everyone in this room would have a different definition about what that actually is for their organization. So start without a project. Think about what your organization needs. What's the pulse? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Whether you're in the supply chain or whether you're a client, and then link everything you do, every single conversation back to that. If you have a purpose and you can communicate that purpose across a massive supply chain, that's probably the most difficult thing to do. But if you have done that, then hopefully every single thing that as you implement BIM, it will be tied back to that purpose and you'll see value. So I think that breaking it down and making it smaller and making it purposeful rather than just saying we're going to do BIM and not know where you are at the end of it.
Yeah, I guess many of them probably would recognize this, but I guess one of the challenges is how do you break it down, right? How do you focus on outcome? Talking about focusing on outcome is easier than trying to identify that. So Jeffrey, what would your perspective be?
I think there's, I hope this is not inappropriate, but I think there's an over-focus on BIM. BIM's a tool, that's all. BIM's a tool to help you realize your vision. And your vision, therefore, can use BIM if you're interested in achieving certain goals, such as the interflow of data, such as interconnectivity, a way of actually accessing your data, using AI, machine learning to be able to drive some type of a greater impact, a greater vision for an ultimate gain. Coming back to your point about having some vision. I think when you look at past, present, and future, from the work that most of us have seen, we see the past, present, and future everywhere in the world at the same time. And we also see it in the same countries at the same time. So part of it is also having leadership and vision that wants to drive towards a certain outcome, which helps and nurses the introduction of this technology as a tool to improve efficiency for the overall organization. That's, I think, a key way of looking at this. If you told me I've got to learn BIM, okay, I'll learn BIM, but I'm not going to use BIM. If you told me that I actually have a chance to help make us a more effective organization, a better organized country, whatever it might be, systems thinker, then I understand where we're going. If I don't know where we're going, it's just another checked box. And that's what you need to avoid, or you're going to run into a lot of BIM fatigue, which makes learning a lot more difficult. I have a professor who's going to confirm this.
I was going to just build on what my two colleagues so far have said. And one of the things that I keep hearing a lot of talk about is what's the minimum viable product that we actually need to build this up? And once you've got that, how can we be agile and keep building, almost like building layers on an onion, so we can actually eventually build out this whole suite? But we can start with that real core that speaks to who we are as organizations. And I think that's kind of that critical first step in being able to give people almost like an easy entry point.
Okay.
Yeah. I would add, we see some fantastic implementations of BIM with digital twins, with CAD, GIS, and just integration across the board. And we see some of our accounts sharing their successes and having champions within their accounts who are the spokesperson, the leader who says, hey, look at what we're doing and look at the efficiencies that we've gained. Look at the types of things that we've overcome, the things that we can now do. And it's because of those champions who are leading the way that other people now are starting to get on board. Other departments get on board. They start to have that fear of missing out. They start to think, uh-oh, we're not doing the same thing that this one department is doing. We better get on board. So you start to share those successes and market that type of accomplishment. And we try to do that not only within the account, but we try to do that on a big stage. Our year in infrastructure award ceremony that really highlights some of the outstanding implementations that have been done. I think that's really such a key to the implementation of BIM, is having that champion and sharing the successes.
Cool. But a quick reflection on, let's say, a lot of these difficulties that we see is a result of technology is not a problem. There is enough technology. It has been available for years. Process and enablers, right? We see IFCs and VSD, all of these available as well. People seems to be a biggest issue, and the value proposition in positioning people is a challenge. Now, you've been in the government role that you have. How do you deal with that?
Now, I think one of the 7 perspectives is exactly about this digital mindset point. And I think we have been facing this challenge with BIM. You have front runners not only within companies or countries, but also within companies and within teams. We have always front runners and the majority. And I think we also see it within government. Digital maturity, digital mentality is not at par. So that's a challenge, because we assume everybody knows that you need BIM, for example. And we will face the same with AI. Oh, it's clear why we need AI. Do we? Do they? Are we taking enough time to discuss and understand what it means? Because a lot of us are trained in technical environments and educated environments, where seniority means you know how you design or how you manage a project. And now suddenly you come into an area of AI, for example, where you don't know anymore. And having the courage to step up and say, I don't know, I'm vulnerable as well. And I think that I've seen in my role of leading digital transformations, that were key moments something happened. Not when the new technology came out. Yep. It happened when a leader people looked up to said, I don't know, but I want to know. And I think that is, I think it's really difficult. It's about changing people, and we're not so educated in training, in changing what we've learned. Yep. So I think one of the 7 perspectives, digital mindset, plays in companies as well in governments, as well in asset owners. It's across the board. Because if we only educate the users and not the managers or not the asset owner, we also will not make progress we want.
So last question to Ridouane. How do you create that digital mindset in JESA? How do you approach that?
Honestly, it was not easy. And until today, I think we're still struggling in some parts of it, in some business units, etc. But maybe it's a cultural thing. But what we come to realize is really when you have a strong sponsor from the top of the company. It doesn't need to be the CEO, but it's better if it's the CEO. Then if it's not, it needs to be really a powerful, inspiring leader who can speak, who can outline a vision, a business vision, that then digital and AI are just a tool to make you go much faster to your end goal and your end game. And you give this vision a context for your strategy, of your threats, of what you may miss out, of what you can enable. Then people start to think about, and then you have to showcase, to learn, and to innovate a lot. So you have to showcase what you have done, you have to learn from what you have done, and be vulnerable in saying, this is what I'm still learning. And then to innovate by proposing even newer ideas, and tell the people that if you don't embark now, the train will go and will let you behind. And this is where they really put their sleeves up and start helping.
Thank you. Yeah, so what's next in here is, if kind of we wrap up, is focusing on outcome, look at BIM as a means to an end and not the end, and focus on upskilling people. And that is where, let's say, plug in buildingSMART professional certification and all the fantastic work that happened. Focus on upskilling people, creating that awareness and creating that value proposition. And talking about what's next and outcome, let's get into the second round of discussions, wherein we have heard a lot of things on digital twins, right? It has been in focus for several years, and it has been seen as something that will help us achieve the outcome that we have, right? So it could be one of the end from a BIM perspective as a means to an end. So how many of you are part of organizations which is investing in digital twins? Okay, we'll wait for a few more people to respond. But is this...
I think one of our challenges, we're talking about people and we're saying it's a people problem, but I think that Mark talked about silos, and I think silos is our biggest problem. We're an industry of silos, and I think that every time we have brilliant people creating brilliant things on a project, and then they disband and go to another project, and then you have to start again. That principle is the biggest challenge, and we're facing it every single time. So that's what's slowing us down. Yes, we need to do more education for owners and help them connect to their information requirements and outcome-based, and be a lean thought and start with the end in mind, all these great things. But our belief is tying granular, collaboratively agreed targets to contract and to direct micropayments. We believe that those incentives can cross those silos and start to become actually a cycle that can repeat and you can learn from.
I'm going to follow up on that point. That's the reason that LeapThought focused on systems engineering. We started with that engineering systems integration vision to the overall industry of construction. So in essence, we weren't captured or cobbled by any specific software that was actually driving improved architecture modeling, improved engineering. We were able to look at the overall table the same way an entity owner would look at an overall table. And what that gives you is a chance to see where some of the pain points that are being identified are, and some of the opportunities that are being identified as well. And then hopefully build a flat table on which there can be a communicative platform which can ingest all these different systems, so that an enterprise vision takes place and then everyone gets access to that same information. That's a start point for solving this kind of problem. And when you get to this issue, therefore, of having a digital twin, the other problem is there's so many different definitions of digital twin. For us, I mean, and the point that you made, my friend at the end from JESA, it's like you do need to have leadership. We were lucky in Singapore because we started with them. They had a vision of where they wanted to go. Maybe not the way the roadmap set, but we were able to co-create with them. Now 80% of their new construction is on our platform, which is basically their platform. It's their data. They own everything, and we integrate to everyone else. And we don't threaten any legacy software. People can use what they use, so people are more happy to integrate. But in the long run, there is an integrated flow, which gets us back from system engineering, hopefully, to systems thinking, which would probably be the remaining next step.
We were just filling.
I know
Yeah,
we're
no.
I love
Sorry.
filling.
It's yeah.
like filling
We
with
talk
you.
about, so you talk about silos, and I think what Mark and Bart also said, it's about connecting that. And I think as engineers, we know how difficult it is to build things, and those silos have evolved over a period of time. So instead of putting in effort in breaking those silos, probably if we put in effort in connecting those silos, we might get a better result. And when we talk about digital twins, then yeah, majority of them want to support a life cycle management, and supporting life cycle management means that we need to connect those silos. Now, how do we do it? Anyone?
I think one of the biggest challenges we have when we're actually trying to do this is to overcome why those silos exist, right? There's the litigation aspect. Nobody wants to be sued for sharing data that they haven't completely checked. I say that as a former design engineer. But there's also data privacy issues. There's all sorts of cybersecurity issues in terms of all of this. So as I'm working with the provincial government in Ontario right now to come up with a digital twin strategy. And one of the challenges that keeps coming up is how do we actually incentivize this data sharing with all of these people who have historically never shared data? And I think that's one of the most challenging aspects. And as soon as we can break that down, I think that that's going to be a fundamental, like that's just going to turn the tide for digital twin adoption.
So again, technology is not a problem. It's the legal framework that's avoiding us achieving the outcome that we need in terms of connecting the silos and supporting the life cycle.
Connected to payment.
Connected
to payment.
Can you elaborate that?
So we do the reasons that we do the reason we do things in construction is two things. One, it's in the contract. We're forced to do it because it's in the contract. The other one is we're going to get paid for it. So I'm saying, why not make them the same thing? Collaborate to get an agreement and everyone understands exactly what those requirements are. So definition of requirements being so clear, machine readable, IDS, etc., and being able to automate the checking and facilitate micro payments for every single one of those tasks, so that the incentive is not just that it's in the contract, but I'm going to get paid today instead of 75 days later when I might be out of business.
So let me follow on that. And that's this notion of past, present, and future existing right now. I'm going to mention Singapore again. The next BSI meeting is going to be in Singapore. You have to see what they've created over the last 6 years. They literally have a model which integrates across. They've incorporated into the contractual model the requirement for working on a specific collaborative system, which they own, manage, and all the data at the end of the day when we all go away is theirs. And so you've broken this question, which is also an important target for BSI, which is a single source of truth, ISO 19650. In many countries, including the US, where I'm from, where I find we're really still prehistoric, excuse my other American friends, they have a hard time with this. But there are other countries in Europe, in Asia, other parts of the world, where they're actually already doing it. So we should not presume, just because some places are stuck, that the rest of the world is stuck. It's not. It's already moving forward. My colleague from Bentley said it. There are models out there. I find that not everyone wants to share the models. And also, I think we have to, talking about breaking silos, it is about revisiting how contracts are done.
Yeah.
You are hiring architects. They do the job, they go away. Then you hire an engineer. Oh, I see this architect's work, tossing it. I can't trust his designs, liability. I'm a lawyer, I understand that game. Do it again. And meanwhile, you're sitting in the back as the entity owner waiting for the guys to figure it out and give you a building, and you never have enough control over that process. That pyramid can be inverted. This industry can be disruptive. And I think, and our colleague from Bentley said it, and the fact is, the companies will follow suit. They'll follow along. They're happy to innovate and change. That's how we got started, on innovation and change. So now it's that added push from changing that pyramid and moving away from a model where it's not the entity owner that runs the show, but it's the contractors. Why not bring it in so it's a much more integrated whole, where the end result is a systems thinking approach where you actually have data which never goes away, which is in an open share platform, which can include regulatory checking at the same time. And if you don't think it exists, go to Singapore because it's working now.
we're talking about an evolution of process change over time, right? The way that construction projects have been delivered 100 years ago, right? It was not really much different than just about 5 years ago, right?
Exactly.
But we're on this exponential path now, I think, in the way that we are behavior change, culture change, and especially as we get a new generation of users of our technologies who are interested and intrigued in the tools and the better processes. I think we have this kind of new crop of workers and users who are saying, why are you doing it like that? How come that's been the way the whole time? Why aren't you doing something a little bit different? And so I think that's the important part here is we need to listen to this new generation. We need to understand the better ways to be much more efficient, right? We need to know where we can make a change and be trying to be open to that. And I think that's the type of tools that we're all trying to build here, something that's intriguing to use. They want to come to work every day and have fun in some cases using the tool and feel like they're being productive and making a difference. It's not just the same old thing every day. And that's the behavior change and the culture change that we're in right now.
Yep, with you.
Thank you. And Bart, in terms of the system thinking and the transformation of the way we think about data and connect data, how do you think, as you're part of the working group, how do you think that the working group and the work that you're doing, the work that is evolving, can facilitate some of the outcomes that the industry expects from digital twins?
Now I'm looking at, while I was listening, looking at this answer of 40 people putting support lifecycle management. On one end, we asked the same question in Rome, I thought, and it was much more distributed than this. So I'm still looking at a purple pillar somewhere here saying, hey, there's something happening. And it's also maybe the way we start interpreting what is a digital twin. It's a way to manage an asset over a further life cycle. There's again a danger in that because it's still looking at, yes, we extend our view from building to building and operating, but what does lifecycle management do? We have then a proper view, and do we look how that bridge or building operate in a wider environment, how it's part of a wider system? So reflecting on this, if I would have dropped the choices below, from a systems perspective, should that have been the right choices? Should we have added a couple of more connected digital twin kind of answers in there? Because part of this is quite not focusing on the outcomes or not focusing on the connection between them. So that's a little bit just reflecting on the question at a screen. But it also shows, I think, how the step we took since 2 years, we are progressing with all said before as requirements or challenges we face. But also to get to that system of system thinking, there's an extra layer to this. And I think with our 7 perspectives, we try to extend that. And now with our latest paper, we try to say, okay, it's not about the building as a building that you need to manage and operate. No, the building is part of a system of a town, and town is part of a country, and the building is also part of a family or a business. And I think that is the link we need to get better in our thinking. And that's why we get that system thinking in our working group of the last year.
Okay. Yes, there is a lot of work still required to be done in there. And Ridouane, you talked about the journey that JESA has been, and you're kind of progressing on BIM. What progress are you making on digital twins, and where are you focusing on in that context?
Reflected also on the colleagues, what they have said. The reality of JESA, and also I think of a lot of beginners, I would say, in this world, is that sometimes the client doesn't know really the technology, or doesn't know the possibilities associated with the digital twin. He may have word the catchphrase, but nothing concrete comes up to mind. So sometimes there's a lot of education that needs to happen with the client, and we're very far from a system outcome perspective, but at least being there with them. And it happened to us, for example, for a data center, where people actually didn't know what the BIM would be used for, and then we had to spend a lot of time with them, and then they would come with better ideas than we had at the first place. And this is also now happening with the assets from the industrial side, where actually people are now even having big consultancy firms to tell us exactly how the information model they wanted in their assets and how we could integrate it from the beginning. So there is a lot of talking with the client and with the owner to make sure that your requirements is right. And it's very important to precise the scope, because sometimes, and the format of this digital twin. For example, the digital twin can be just a smart PNID, if you guys know what it means, with like some lights and some indicators maybe. And sometimes it can be as complex as the 3D model in the metaverse, with like simulations of people again getting in and out, and the cars moving, and etc. So, and also the use cases that are associated with that. Is it safety related? Is training related, etc. And when you have all of that written, when you also agree, and this is an issue in our industry, we're still not really open on that, but when you agree also on the software, on the format, on all of this, then the implementation is pretty easy, because you force your internal teams to collaborate to produce this output. This is actually a forcing mechanism for internally adopting BIM. What we have to realize also is that sometimes you talk about us versus the other people, but also internally, the silos between construction and engineering, between engineering and commissioning, etc., sometimes need a lot of attention. And you realize that when asking people, what's actually the information you need in construction? What's actually the information you need in commissioning? Then you get information, that engineering didn't think about needing to produce. And you tell them, no, please, you need to produce this. And they said, okay, this is not going to cost me a lot. I can add it in the model. And then you get to the model clearly, and there is no RFIs coming back, and everything is smoother than it was initially planned. So in the whole process to get a good digital twin, I think it's about asking a lot of questions to a lot of people to get the requirements clear.
Okay, good. So just to wrap it up, if I understand correctly, then in case of digital twins, and what's next is to figure out how we can reimagine the contractual framework, how we can reimagine procuring outcomes, and not procure, information is part of the outcome that we need for it to be better connected to support the whole life cycle management. And that without that, we are not going to be able to do that, and we might probably come back in 2 years' time and have the same issues. Jeffrey, you want to share something?
One quick thought. I mean, the fact is a digital twin should be co-generative with the actual construction. It starts together from the first assembly of data, and it continues through the entire process of the physical construction. So by the time you finish your construction, your handover, you have a complete record of the entire process. That's a digital twin. That's not going back and making a retroactive copy. So you need an interactive approach where there's an effective data share. And that's the approach which you'll see cutting edge organizations trying to push for. That's what you want. You want to start from the beginning, everything captured. ISO 1965, again, I'm mentioning it once more. I see Ian over there. It's important because that's one of the other things, a single source of truth. What will make the engineer trust the contractor? There has to be some kind of mechanism where there's surety, where we don't have the liability questions. So that becomes a critical part of this, a single source of truth where model becomes contract. And actually commending Bentley here, because in essence, I know some of these projects with IHEAP, I met some of the DOTs, they're doing model source of contract. Utah, I think, was one. And Bentley's been pushing that, which is nice to see that there's an understanding that as it progresses from the pre-designer to the designer to the engineer to the final engineer to me, whatever I do, and to the final entity owner, there's a single source of truth, ISO 19650, which is what's behind this process, co-generative.
Okay, talking about co-generative and the process, there obviously the pace at which technology is moving is much faster, and people are still trying to get over BIM and then digital twin, and now there is a hype on AI, and we see AI with the promise of connecting all of these silos, right? Connecting different information containers and redefining, I would say, single source of truth, also raising some questions on trust in a way, right? In terms of how do we trust this? And a quick question for all of you, if you can get your phones, in terms of, we're curious to know how many of you are investing in AI. You or your organizations are investing in AI. And what would that look like in terms of what does that future look like as we transition to the next phase where data is available, technology is available, assume that people have the skills as well to work with it. What would that world look like? How do we reimagine that? What's next for the future of work within the civil engineering context, where if we can leverage the maximum potential of AI, how would that work look like? Or anyone can start with. I
So
don't
I-
want to go in a sequence.
Whichever.
Yeah.
I love the fact that somebody said that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using AI is going to take your job. And I think that's amazing to see that there are some results here saying not sure and no, because I have a friend of mine works for a 40,000 person organization, and they are rolling out AI in their organization, but you sort of have to apply for it, and then you have to get qualified for it. And so there's 35,000 people in their organization not even using it, not permitted to use it, not even allowed to use some kind of additional source. So that is a problem. That whole like fear of, is AI going to take my job, my role? Well, personally, you need to start seeking, finding ways to implement it in your own role. And then, yes, it's going to do what you just said, is connect all of these single sources of truth. We're going to find out whether they are truth, and we're also going to be able to connect them. But I think that the biggest thing is, how do you start using it yourself for your own purposes, and throw a spreadsheet into ChatGPT and ask it to do some things. That sort of thing is eye-opening, and that's the sort of the starting at grassroots rather than expecting it to suddenly solve all of our problems, because we've got bad data as well. That's kind of one of the reasons why not to throw AI at this big sources of truth.
And I'm going to take one step back. Back in 2015, LeapThought started using machine learning. And we had a big project in New Zealand. They were trying to put together 5 different county organizations into a single organization. They had a lot of data. We used machine learning just to try to organize the petabytes of information that were coming in. So we had a unified source where we could federate, we could code, and we had a start point. AI comes in next. I mean, AI is kind of like the human face. It tries to mimic human intelligence. That's what it's doing. But if your data set isn't any good, you're going to be mining nothing. So the key is already to start with a strong federated system, which has the capacity to integrate and access data across all sets and all environments, from my pre-architect, my architect, my engineer, through to me, so that it's all on the same platform, and then you can start answering the right questions. The other thing that's interesting is I recently told that, they have, there's new job descriptions for like AI whisperers and people like this who can basically toggle the system so they can get the data out. But remember, you need to have good use cases. What are your use cases inside that data set, and what are you aiming to do? Otherwise, you're just going to end up with some stupid ChatGPT sitting on top of your system, which is not an evolution, right? In terms of the vision, I keep coming back to our professor over here, going towards a systems thinking. That is not an evolution. That's just someone saying, hey, you need AI. We're talking about having solid data, federated, coded, analyzed, and knowing what you're trying to mine for, and then designing your AI tool for that information.
Okay, interesting. So you just talked about data. So you talked, let's say in 2 minutes, you said data 20 times.
Yeah,
right?
It is data.
Right. So AI is data. So my question to Jen would be,
AI is accessing data.
Accessing data, but then it needs data. So Jen, you're in research and in academics, and you've talked about data for a long time, right? And the importance of data. What does that mean from an open standards perspective, and what is the relevance of data and the need for data and connecting all of that?
Well, to step back, I think AI is a great enabler of data and data security. It's also a great multiplier. We all know the term garbage in, garbage out. You can create incredible amounts of garbage outputs with garbage inputs. One of the things that we're seeing this is kind of really cutting edge, we're stealing it from manufacturing. So I love stealing things from other disciplines that are maybe a little bit more quick to adopt new change. And they have this idea of a cognitive digital twin. And those are twins that have 6 things that you use AI to do. It can pay attention to the right information. So it knows what to pay attention to. It can perceive the information on a network and perceive the state of that information, so it can tell if it's suddenly not getting information. It's got complex memory structures, so it's storing the right things to make it easier, so you're not pre-processing like 300,000 or 3 billion data points every time you want to answer a question. You've got reasoning and problem-solving algorithms, and those can be machine learning based. They can actually be using more sophisticated AI. And the last one, and this is what we aren't seeing yet, but I think it's going to be driving the next few years, is the ability to learn. What if we could make twins that could actually learn and self-adjust to the data as we go in. So we build a bridge, and then we actually, the BIM or the model itself can be adapted as the sensors tell us new things, and it starts to learn and be able to predict new behaviors. And that, I think, is going to be the brave new world, or the great new world of BIM and of digital twins. So that's what I'm really excited about in terms of just how we can use data differently. It's going to reinvent everything.
Cool. And let's say if we talk about what's next, and then where should these people be investing in when we talk about AI, Joe or Bart?
Yeah, I'll mention some examples of what we're seeing from Bentley, from maybe starting with just the mundane is something around, I think you mentioned P&ID symbology. Imagine you have to come into work and your job is to basically look at a raster scan of a P&ID and try to understand what symbol is that, what data does that match to, right? Unfortunately, somebody printed out a CAD drawing. That's all you've got is a scan now, and you're trying to go through symbol by symbol by symbol to try and understand what is that symbol and how does it match the database. With AI technology now, we can have an automated path to basically look at those symbols and map them straight to the database. Okay, so it allows then the user to become much more creative, right? They can lean on AI to do that type of mundane, tedious work, something that is kind of exhausting to the user, and allow them to start to really use their creativity to do something interesting, something fun, and something that they were paid to do, to design, right? Not just to sit and look at scans all day. The other thing we're seeing AI is around safety and efficiency. We're seeing drones fly over bridges and being able to use crack detection around AI. Understand where on that bridge you might have a crack that needs to be identified and needs to be maintained. We can look at rusty bolts and things like that to understand where are those situations where we need to either look at a bridge or even a roadway or a tarmac on a runway. And instead of having to stop the flights coming into the airport, you fly the drone very quickly with a fast scan, and then AI looks at that tarmac and understands where are the cracks on that tarmac or where are the cracks on that bridge much, much better than a human eye could ever do, right? So these are some of the areas that we're looking at for AI. And in fact, now we're starting to crowdsource, if you will, with an acquisition from BlinkSea. BlinkSea has a hardware component agreement with UPS and FedEx and many of the 18-wheeler trucking agencies throughout the US. And basically all the video that they're taking throughout those days that they go down almost every road, we're capturing that video, and we're seeing then the types of areas that we need to do some maintenance. So we think about areas around, maybe it's striping on pavement. Maybe it's some type of signal that's obfuscated by vegetation, or maybe it's vegetation in general. You start to be able to not sell just the software, but you can sell them the insights. That is what's really becoming much more powerful around AI. It's not just the tool around how to make it quicker or make it less mundane, but also then to say, hey, City of Houston or City of New York, do you know that you have a certain amount of striping that needs to be redone? And this is the exact amount of paint that you need to buy to go out and stripe so that you're having the right requirements for handicap access or crosswalks, things like that. These are the types of advancements we're really starting to see with AI that are really interesting for our accounts.
Cool. And from a systems perspective, about does it really help? Does AI help in your thinking of systems or systems within systems, whatever that is?
Let's ask ChatGPT now. Yeah. Where is my friend if I need him? Okay, I'm kidding. Now, but let's go back to Marcus' presentation, and in particular 2 slides. One is the burning earth. And if you look at the challenges up there, also on a smaller scale, for example, a country, let's take my own country, the Netherlands. If we want to do what we need to do in the built environment, whether it's reaching our sustainability targets or just make sure that people have a safe home, not having foundation problems why they have to leave their houses. That's actually happening in the Netherlands. Or bridges that collapse, have been collapsing already in parts of Europe and will collapse in the Netherlands as well. If we don't step up. And step up is factor 2 or 3 in productivity. Yeah? It's not a little bit left or right, because we need to raise productivity. And I think with there, AI comes in a way. Huh? AI can help us to be more productive. And then I come back to the second slide of Mark, which was about outcomes, systems, and interventions. Parts of it, of course, and about the interventions and how we do them. Huh? Smarter, quicker, automating them. And I think we heard a couple of examples, whether it's through computer vision, Gen AI, hybrid AI. They're all kind of forms that can help us to do those interventions smarter. but it's not just about doing the things right, but it's also about doing the right things. So I think where it secondly can come in is help them to observe those systems better and learn from them better and get the data from those various sources out there and get insights which you really need to better understand those systems. And that also will help us to better prioritize the scarce resources we will have. The answer is not we educate more people because they won't be there. And we need to work smarter. And I think observing the systems using AI is a second way of using it. And I think a lot of examples are focusing on the interventions. That's great.
Yeah.
But let not underestimate the potential and the power and the need to use AI to learn from and observe systems that are so complex that we need to do together with AI.
Yeah, and that is where the way I kind of define AI is for our community. I see it as an augmenting our intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because we all of us are fairly intelligent. We are engineers in the end, right? So there is a certain level of intelligence, and probably AI can help augment our intelligence and then connect that as well. Now, we talked about systems and systems thinking, and would be good to get a perspective of what you heard from Mark and all of us in terms of, to get your perspective on what do you see system thinking as? Is it going to help you? Is it not, or less important, or don't really care about it? Or dinner is more important? Okay.
So maybe just one observation about system thinking and AI, because when you think about AI today, especially in the context of a company, you actually have more responsibility than in the past, where you actually could just buy the latest software and you could be as innovative as the market leaders. Actually, AI is bringing the responsibility of innovation back to the enterprise, because the enterprise has the data power that actually is the engine for this AI to be more responsible. And if the company is not adopting a responsible attitude towards AI and the responsible attitude towards its ecosystem, by using system thinking as a tool, but other tools also exist in terms of sustainable development, etc., it will not fulfill, I mean, it may fulfill some of its purpose, but it will not fulfill the purpose that we want to have as a community, and that the humanity as a whole need to be up to the challenge of the future transitions.
Good. Okay, so it's good to see.
Just a comment on that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I may. I don't disagree, but I think this takes you back to the importance of public sector, government, large-scale entities, and their role in this process. A consultant or a firm is not paid to solve this problem, unfortunately, but a government has that overall responsibility. So there's an importance to remember that as much as governments may rely on us for AI or machine learning, it's the governments themselves who need to have that vision and comprehension and the possibility of the use case. And that becomes important. And I'll just say quickly, look at Singapore CoreNet X. It's not as comprehensive as this, but it's 8 regulatory agencies: environment, water, sanitation, etc. Every agency using AI on the same platform, doing automatic checks through a single source of truth model, and it's operative. First in the world, it's been up now. Calvin, you were just there, my friend from Stanford. It's been up and operative now for about 5-6 months. That's AI driven in the hands of government. Now, private sector companies like ours will have to continue to work with them to keep improving it, but it's going to be at the demand of the government. So I come back to this idea of learning from, and I love this, Joe. I mean, governments also have to learn from each other. That was one of the points of having BSI in the first place, being able to have governments go government to government, because that's a separate discussion. Sometimes they don't want to sit with a bunch of engineers because they may not have the same competence levels that we do, but they have a social obligation that goes way beyond ours. So it's something to keep in mind.
Good. No, thank you. I'm curious to see what is the biggest feature of systems thinking then you guys think, in terms of what you have heard of. Would be good to get your perspective. And this is a word cloud, so feel free to share whatever comes to your mind. And while they think of it, probably good for you to reflect, what does it mean for you?
I think that one of the things that we need, I was going to rank systems thinking as critical because it's one of those things that we need for the wicked problems, right? We've solved all the easy problems, or at least we know how to solve problems. Like I'm an engineer too, we all know how to solve problems. But it's these wicked problems with all of these interfaces, right? We're seeing probably on any of the projects, those of us who are working in the real world, you see projects and all of a sudden 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you might have had 2 clients or 2 client reps across the table. Now you have 10 and you've got 10 different stakeholders you're trying to manage. You have a lot more interfaces between different groups. So I'm seeing holistic and interoperability and connection. And those are really some of the things that without that, there's no way that we can actually solve these problems that are more than the sum of their parts. But if we can actually have a solution that brings everything together and lets us actually really get like a 360 perspective, then I think that that's actually going to be the breakthrough that we need to start addressing things like climate change. So
I think about the example with construction of a dam around systems thinking. So if you think about a dam, it's a hydro plant, right? Okay, yeah. So you're moving water to generate electricity. So is it part of the water industry? Is it part of the energy industry? Is it also part of water reclamation? Is it water retention? Is it recreation? You start to overlap so many parts of our industries that we all touch here: environmental, infrastructure, some types of energy and water, and they all have to come together. They all have to be able to live in this harmonious environment. And the systems of systems basically that come together, it's amazing here because you talk about a single source of truth. In this case, you actually have multiple sources of truth all coming together in one environment. And that has to live on. And that data will, by the way, outlive us all. It's really important to think about that. As much as we all want you to use our software, right, and become trained, the data is the massive investment here. The data is going to outlive us all. If you think about the data that we're using today from 20, 30, maybe 50 years ago, right, we're still pulling some of that data together. Think about the data that we're using today and how far that's going to live on, far past all of us being in this room or any buildingSMART conference to come.
And it's data that we don't even know the use of yet.
Right.
We don't know how we're going to use it, but it needs to be in a place that can be accessed by those who need it. You don't want someone walking away with it and say, well, my contract's done, I'm gone, you can't access it. It belongs, if it's not social good, it at least belongs to the entity owner. So you have that kind of an interface. Otherwise, you can't continue to learn from it. So I totally agree with you, Joe. For sure.
And at the same time, it's like, I don't know whether the right answer is all of the data or a little bit of the data, but I had the fortunate experience working for one of the world's largest owners. And I was a bit of a BIM nerd when I went in there, and I thought all of the data is the best thing. And actually going to the operations management team, which operated and managed hundreds of different campus buildings and hundreds of different developments, and they had 800 staff to do this, and they worked with notepads, and they didn't think that they needed any more data. But you can't really aggregate that very easily. You can't really analyze that very easily. So when we shared how much data we could provide, we came up with a compromise, and it was 17 pieces of data that they needed to understand about assets. So it's like, know where to start, because if you start with too much, it can go wrong and the data is not going to be credible. If you start with, have a strategy and have that conversation. I think that's the,
Great. It's great to see that interoperability is at the heart of all of this, right? We want it to be holistic. We want it to be connected. Now, just wrapping up, I want each of you to share one point in terms of looking at all of this, what we have discussed. What is one thing that the BSI community can start doing differently starting tomorrow? That, let's say, I remember a famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "Be the change that you want to be." So what is the change that this community needs to bring in to make this into reality? So probably, Bart, 1 point, 1 minute.
Now, I was really, 6 months ago, we came up with this idea to write a third white paper about system thinking and systems. And if I see and I asked myself at the time, is this the right message to the right audience, literally? And seeing the answers on the previous Menti poll and these words says, yes, it was a relevant topic to put it out there. Because secondly, I think it shows also the words on this word cloud, that acknowledging there are more perspectives than interoperability and data and technology and workflows and digital mindset. I think it shows the relevancy of this community to work on this route towards connected digital twins based on system thinking. So I think for me, it's only encouraging to read this, see this, and also to work together with a working group, but also the wider community to take this thinking a step further, not in another level of complexity maybe, but towards more practical and how does it work in the example of the dam or the example of the bridge, where you relate the bridge to the traffic and the traffic to the city and make better decisions based on better data.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Maybe what I would close with as a thinking is we are really in the forefront of this industry that is already long behind others, and all of us need to have some kind of like feeling of agency and responsibility towards actually doing more than just our role in our individual organizations. And buildingSMART International is an example of that, but really having this, at least the minimum ecosystem thinking by challenging ourselves to bring into this transformation more than just our immediate organization. But the better actually is to think in terms of symbiosis. How can we actually grow as an ecosystem all over the world in symbiosis, feeding with each other? And I'm sure that actually data, and you are all convinced, but also all of these new technologies will be the vein of this system.
I would just mention a few terms here: evangelism, awareness, inspiration, right? And sharing successes. I think we're actually well on our way. That's what we're really doing here. And that's what we're going to be doing tonight, tomorrow on LinkedIn. Everybody's posting things and sharing the successes, sharing the inspiration, sharing the types of new thinking that we're doing here. And I think that's what we continue to have to do. Be proud of your work. Make sure people understand the type of breakthroughs that you've overcome. Show them those type of examples and say, couldn't you do this too? And I think we're well on our way to making that happen on a grand scale.
I think that the shift to systems thinking is the first of two seismic shifts that we actually have to make. And I think the second one's going to be harder. We keep talking about all of these people problems that we have, and the legal problems, and the social problems, and the engagement problems. The socio-technical perspective, this idea that nothing that what we're doing is purely technical, because there's always going to be people, there's always going to be organizations, there's always going to be these other drivers. And I think that being able to start to engage with it on both of those levels and that hybrid level, I think it's going to be absolutely critical for solving the wicked problems that are ahead of us.
This is a paradigm shift, right? This is a paradigm shift right now. That's what's happening. So do you expect that when you go talk to the lawyers in your companies that they're going to be in agreement with this? No. It comes back to what you said about you need to have some leadership and vision. And coming back to Joe's point about sharing, I learned something at this last IHEAP conference, which is where all the departments of transportation in the United States, 50 different divisions come together. The federal government in the States does something useful, I learned. They actually provide grants to specific departments of transportation to carry out research on things which the government thinks are going to have a broader spillover effect and will be best practices to then share amongst the other departments of transportation. That's a really good idea. Putting the money into research and then making sure those results are put out so people understand. And also, I want to say, reward successes. You've said it. Look, I've said Singapore twice. I'm serious about it. They should get some credit for taking the risks that they have. They've come a long way in 5 or 6 years. They know they're not there. You could say that about the Middle East. There's some amazing leaders in the Middle East. You've got Norway, you've got countries who are out there, and I know that's part of the success of BSI is driving that. So it falls to us to actually be willing to tell some of our colleagues, and even our bosses, hey, you might want to check out what's going on in Norway, or you might want to see what's going on in this specific project, and talk their language, because you can save money, or because we'll get better access to data. Whatever the language is, you are evangelists, right? That's why you're here. If you walk out no better than when you came, then you're no better than when you came.
Thank you. Thank you all. You have Clive's last words before we end? You're almost over our time.
Oh, I'll be quick. I think systems thinking, bringing it back to the people, find your external customer. And what that means from a lean perspective is there are lots of customers out there. Find one in a team that is not in your team or in your company. Find out what they want, because those conversations are going to bring all of these systems together.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is just the beginning. Continue thinking on this, and there's a lot more to do. But I think all of us should be proud of what we have been able to
Sir.
achieve so far.
Lawyer, sir.
A big round of applause for my panelists, please. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, there you go.
Back to you, Aidan.
US. We got to put our hats back on.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Jugal Makwana for excellently hosting this session, and thank you for your participation, panelists, and also in the audience for giving us some insights onto the plenary. So you'll be really glad to know that we're almost at the end. Yep, thank you. Couple of things. We are going to invite Ian Howell up, our chairman for buildingSMART International, just to have a little summary of today's events. We're then going to invite the Singapore chapter up just to share something to get you excited about Singapore. But lastly, we're going to take a group photo. So these things, like the data we heard earlier, are going to outlive us all. These pictures, I'm sure of it, we'll all be seeing these for many years. So we will be taking a group photo. We are going to give a very strict time after we finish this to go out to the front, because we're told by the photographer that will be the best place to take it. So we'll do it quite quickly, and then we'll take a photo, and then we will have concluded the day. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Ian for a few closing remarks.
Aidan, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to the Morocco chapter for hosting us. Very hard to do this as a young chapter and a new chapter, but it's a wonderful excuse for us all. I saw 90% of the hands go up this morning as first-time visitors to Morocco. So it's amazing that we've all had that opportunity. And of course, it's also the first conference in Africa. So that's a big milestone for buildingSMART. This is somewhat of a beachhead to try and get more impact and more engagement with industry in a range of countries that are spending a lot of money on buildings and infrastructure. So it's great to be in Latin America with Brazil as our beachhead, and of course here in Africa with Morocco as our beachhead. It's also a first partnership with the CIB working group. It is fantastic to be here with you and have you sitting beside us and co-presenting with us. And I hope that's the start of a long collaboration. I think it was amazing to me for a young chapter to have the ministerial representation on the stage that we had this morning, to see that level of government support in terms of how important BIM and openBIM are in terms of this country's aspirations for some amazing infrastructure, high-speed rail, tunnels across the Mediterranean, just really, really aspirational ideas that I hope our openBIM community can help bring to fruition. We also saw the signing of the cooperation agreements, which is great for the young chapter to have that support for their mission. So I'm sure that we'll see a lot more success continuing here in Morocco. They tell me we're also going to see Morocco winning the World Cup in 2030, but jury's out on that one. I did want to acknowledge Guangdong Airport Authority. We have strategic partners, which is our highest level of membership. It's really important to have that support. But more importantly, Guangdong Airport Authority are working in China to expand not only their membership as strategic partners, to build a BIM alliance of the other airports in China to actually take over that membership and be on our strategic advisory council. So that's really exciting for the airports domain. It's really exciting for buildingSMART to imagine that a group of airports in China will all be pursuing openBIM as part of their mandate. Aidan mentioned this morning 3 documents. I believe it was the new digital twin white paper, it was the awards brochure, and the IFC mandates paper. This morning we said we were trying to upload them. I can tell you now that they are uploaded. They are on the buildingSMART International website, available for download. Please use them as resources in your companies, in your chapters, all part of telling the story to others in terms of the case studies, the success stories in the awards program, and we just heard how important they are. And this is a good way to communicate them. The systems thinking through the digital twin white paper, and the leadership that other organizations are showing by having openBIM mandates. So those 3 documents are available and should be very, very valuable resources. We've had a lot of presenters today. We've had panelists. Thank you to all of you who have helped create the content and share the perspectives that you've shared with us all. These events don't work without content that is engaging and interesting and challenging for us all to walk out, I think Jeffrey said, better than when we came in. And I think that's certainly the case. But to me, I think there's been two themes in all of that. One is industry is ready for open standards, and there is a demand that we've not seen before. Some of us have been at this for a long time, too long, but there's now a real demand for open standards because there's an appreciation of the importance of data, accessibility to data, longevity of data. So that demand is in place. And I think we also learned today and saw examples, we'll see more tomorrow and also on Thursday, where openBIM is working now. It's not a matter of waiting. There's an opportunity to take advantage and reap benefits and really show ROI on the use of openBIM immediately. So I'm going to be checking up on you all at the next summit to make sure you've made some progress and look forward to that. And the person that's going to tell us a little bit about the next summit is Vanessa from the Singapore chapter. And I'm going to hand over the mic to her. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vanessa from buildingSMART Singapore. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Singapore Summit and why you must come in there. So once we get the slides up, I'm going to tell you more about it. All right, so I'm calling myself the Chief Tour Guide because I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about the program and how you can plan your time around it. This is happening from the 18th to 20th of March, but my recommendation, of course, is that you put in a few more days, you know, perhaps after you can check out the things around Singapore. And all right, when you come to Singapore, you will experience a city in nature. And let me tell you more about the summit now. Okay, it's taking place across 3 days and put in some extra days, and this is why. So, to make the Singapore Summit bigger and better, we are partnering with BuildTech Asia. It's a construction trade show that focuses on technology innovation, construction safety, and sustainability for the built environment. Now, with the co-location, we are expecting a larger stage and a more diverse crowd of built environment professionals joining us at this event. This will become the must-attend event of the year for anybody that's in the built environment, and you're getting first dibs on it. The Singapore Summit will be held at the Singapore Expo, which is close to the airport, and that's great because one of the highlights of Singapore is the airport itself. This is one of the most iconic features you will see the moment that you step into Singapore. It's a stunning visual experience of the world's tallest indoor waterfall, standing at 40 meters, cascading through the center of a lifestyle hub, surrounded by a lush indoor forest valley, featuring something like 2,000 trees and 100,000 shrubs. It's a nature retreat within the airport itself. There is also a canopy park. So, you know, whether you're bringing little humans with you or, you know, you're an adult human just like me, you can enjoy it too. And I would also like to highlight that there's really good shopping there. So, you know, you can eat there, shop there, and experience nature within the airport itself. So with the co-location, we're going to greatly expand the amount of space that we have for the exhibition. And that means that we will be able to bring in a lot more exhibitors and attendees that are centered around construction technology, innovation, and collaboration. So if you are already booked as a sponsor, or you've indicated your interest at the Singapore Summit, you will find that there is so much value because this partnership with BuildTech Asia offers exposure not only to our regular community of summit attendees, it now also includes over 5,000 regional visitors that will visit BuildTech Asia. We're now open to sign up for sponsors. So if you're interested, please come and speak with Aidan or Dan or I for some details. So this is what the show floor looks like. Our lunch area will be embedded within this hall on the top left-hand corner of the screen. So you will be able to explore the exhibition easily before or after lunch. Within the exhibition hall, there is a pavilion that is dedicated to sponsors of the Singapore Summit, alongside other pavilions dedicated to smart facilities management, AI, robotics, fire safety and security, sustainable construction, and innovative materials and finishes. There will be plenty of activities for you to learn, experience, and network. And we're now working with the BuildTech Asia team to plan these programs and activities, such as on-site guided tours of the exhibition hall, as well as curating off-site tours to innovation centers around Singapore. One of the really nice things about having a partner like BuildTech Asia is that they're also sponsoring the beer at the end of the networking session happening on the end of day one. So my pro tip for you is to hit there at the networking session after the summit program ends for the day. We're expecting a much bigger turnout than expected because of the co-location of events, and also because BuildTech Asia is our region's most influential trade event for building and construction industry that is championing digital and smart technology. So very similar to the topics that we're exploring here at the buildingSMART summits. So this is an overview of the content. You can see that there are a number of events happening at the same time. What we're familiar with is the event at the bottom, the buildingSMART International Summit, but happening alongside our event is a few other events relating to robotics, AI, construction machinery and equipment, and smart facilities management as well. In terms of the content of the Singapore Summit, now you already heard about Singapore's IFC mandate, which is based on a broader framework that we call the Industry Transformation Map. That is a product of extensive tripartite engagement and crystallizes the collective vision and strategies in Singapore to transform the built environment sector. Beginning on the 1st of April 2025, just to recap, IFC files will become the basis for regulatory submissions for new projects. It's a revolutionary change in which our project teams will create and submit a coordinated IFC model from which government agencies can then extract information for compliance review. And then our government agencies will collectively review this submission and provide consolidated feedback to the project team. So in summary, we're going to see more than 20 approval touch points across various government agencies today being streamlined into 3 key submission gateways. At each gateway, qualified persons like architects and engineers will make the coordinated submission, and for government agencies to provide a consolidated response to that. So the idea of that is that this kind of upfront coordination is meant to help us to minimize abortive works downstream. Jeff has already spoken about it, but when you come to Singapore, you will learn more and hear more from the people who are making this vision a reality. On the 3rd day of the summit, we will have the summit dinner at the Marina Bay Sands. It's one of the world's most iconic landmarks, known for its futuristic design and impressive engineering. The Sky Park is that surfboard-looking structure that sits on the top of the 3 towers that you see on the screen. And if you get to the top of the Sky Park, you'll find 360-degree views of Singapore's skyline and one of the world's largest infinity pools. There is a bar at the top where you can enjoy a drink or two with friends and end off by toasting with a Singapore sling. So Dan has personally quality checked the drink, so you can check in with him for details. Ask him if it's any good. After that, because it's located in the Marina Bay area, I invite you to take a walk around Marina Bay after the summit dinner. It is the centerpiece of Singapore's urban transformation efforts. Now, believe it or not, this place started off as the point of entry for visitors and immigrants that are seeking a better life in Singapore. This is what it used to look like. Now, foreseeing a need to grow the city center, what Singapore did was to start on an ambitious land transformation project in 1971. By 1994, the final 38 hectares of land were reclaimed at this area to create the final shore profile of the Marina Bay that you will see today. And now Marina Bay is a leading financial center, a civic space, and a community playground for everyone. It's a very walkable place. It's located just right outside the place that we're going to have our summit dinner. And I encourage you to take a walk around it before or after the dinner. This journey to become the symbol of modern Singapore is a story of Singapore's long-term planning and meticulous implementation. So I urge you to experience this for yourself. All right. So with that, I invite you to come down to Singapore. Please book your tickets and see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was an AI-generated image of me having a cocktail on the Marina Bay Sands, just so you know. That's not part of my job. Anyway, some of you may have heard that it was raining cats and dogs out there, which is a phrase we use. That's quite sort of Singapore weather, isn't it? Sort of hot, then raining. So we've been told we can't go outside and take the group photo, so we're going to take it here. So can I invite everyone to the front? Sorry, before that, thank you all very much for your attendance. Thank you all to the speakers. Thank you to everyone online. Thank you so much for today's session. I thought it was a really interesting perspective on the sort of past, present, and future, and a lot to go over the next couple of days. So we're going to try and do this quite quickly because we've obviously run over on the schedule. So if I could invite everyone up, I think what we're going to have to do, it's probably not ideal in here, is plenty of people at the front and some people on stage. I don't know how strong this is, so I may be told by the venue that this is not suitable. So maybe not too many people on the stage would be good. And with that, I think when Henry's ready, could we invite everyone forward, please? And we're going to take a group photo.